Hello and welcome to Prop Design at CGMA. My name's Derek Kosol. I'll be your instructor for the quarter. And I'd like to get started with maybe some examples of work that I've done in the past while working out of LA and occasionally Orange County, depending on where the work takes me through the years. So these are some 8.5 by 11 sketches. I don't want to spend too much time on some of the ideas or maybe technique that's in these images. But these are kind of sketches towards a final product. Usually I'm more of an environment artist, but on many occasions I've gotten the chance to work and design cool props like these little cars for these sort of egg-like kind of creatures for this Wii title I've worked on in the past. This is like a space station thing I've done for a Disney interactive title. Robots that I've done in my sketchbook, things like that. Pencil drawings, pen drawings. So what I want to talk about with this set is kind of, I can get technicals on occasion, and sometimes you need to. Sometimes you need to be a lot looser. This as an example. If you look very carefully, it's pretty loose. I mean, I didn't really use any ellipse guides here. These are just kind of scribbling out ideas, right? These paper clip guides representing scale. This is some kind of scale-ovator where you scale up or down. Again, really quick ideas. Some things that we're going to be going over in the next couple weeks. Here are a few more sketches. And again, when zoomed up close, these actually fall apart quite a bit. But that's okay, because these are just kind of sketches for other ideas that will be further developed later. And then, sometimes, we can spend a little bit more time and get a little bit tighter, a little bit more formal, perhaps, with some of our drawings. And of course, color would be fun. Something like this I would consider a sketch render, which is what I'll be talking about in this upcoming classes and as they go on. These kind of give you a quick idea of what the object is or what the prop is really, since a car is really just a complicated prop. It's not really a rendering or a painting just to get those terms sorted out. There will be a time where you will need to do really formal final paintings, especially in film when they really want to see everything in high resolution. Or in games, line drawings like this actually is pretty useful because you can hand this off straight to a modeler without having to define or paint mood and atmosphere, because that really takes a long time. And they can go ahead and get started on making models with this, and then you can probably give them perhaps a rough sketch like so that they can texture the models without having to spend too much time. Here's another car example. I've done bicycles in the past. Again, a bit of a complicated prop. And of course, if you get the time, you can render things. Sometimes the studio doesn't, I guess, grant you the time to do such longer pieces. But occasionally you get it, and and it really depends on the studio too. Other studios, like Blizzard as an example, I feel like they give you quite a bit of time to to really see out pieces to the end. Such as this. So this is something that I would consider more of a final, things like that, just to reinstate some of that terminology we'll be going over in the class. This was fun. I got to design some planets in this set. Again, for that Disney title. This would be Earth or similar to Earth, perhaps man-made construction rings or something, lava worlds, ice worlds, things like that. So again, this would be an example of something that I would expect for finals or final renderings. Let's say if I were to ask for it later in the class. So basically, how I want to approach this quarter is the first week we're gonna spend some time designing based on a style and a theme, which is really what I want to get started talking about next. I think it's really important to understand styles and what defines a style, etc., etc., because different employers will be asking for different things, and at the end of the day, you're gonna kind of draw the way you draw. For example, these pencil sketches that I've been showing you earlier. This is kind of just the way I draw, but I find it more useful lately to be able to adapt styles. And also, if you're able to adapt, you can be in bigger houses like Disney or DreamWorks, when really the goal of their films are to change a style of each film with each following film, so that they don't really duplicate the look of any one show. So it's a useful skill to have and a useful skill to understand, so that you don't really kind of get stuck in drawing what you draw the way you draw it. Of course, if you find a style that's yours and unique, that's your own, like Frank Frazetta, Sid Mead, James Jean, Paul Felix, or any of those guys, of course, hold on to it. But it's also good to be able to adapt. So, getting to that, I come up with this chart, which I actually didn't invent this, but this was, passed along to me from, I guess, generations of school, if you will. What this basically is a style chart. The way I tend to understand style. So we have on one column in this upper row over here, we have this kind of describes the visuals of the world, whether it's photoreal like a live action film, live action traditional film perhaps, and then something more stylized like a 2D animated cartoon. On the left side we have kind of physics of the world, because you get stories with magic and sci-fi where people are going to space, meeting aliens, such as Avatar over here, or the film Alien, if you can make out that smudge over here, or even Star Wars, right, where things are believable, but they don't exactly happen in our world. And then obviously you get something down here like Ultraman at this, and the Cat in the Hat, really. At this far end of the spectrum, you kind of have like these goofy, stylized, but yet everything is live action. So that's kind of why this is down here. Now, if we look at the chart and you go to the extreme bottom right end, we have Looney Tunes over here. So this is here because if you imagine a really stylized visual and an extremely stylized physics in the world, you really get things like Looney Tunes and Super Mario Brothers and maybe some of the silly symphonies from those old Disney films and stuff like that. So that's where this belongs. And you'll also notice a lot of things tend to be here. This is Minecraft, so not only movies and cartoons and animation, but video games, becoming their own legitimate art form, get a spot in this hierarchy as well. So you get something like Minecraft, which is really goofy, right? 8-bit world. What's holding it back from being this zany kind of world is that it does have a physics engine, and things kind of behave sort of realistic in a way. Yet you can build your world from scratch and destroy it if you want, which really allows it to be kind of zany and categorized here. Fantasia as well. You got the devil and these demons, and you have those crazy tie-dye color elephants, and all those weird things that happen. Those dancing shrooms, all that stuff. So the real world physics tends to push out beyond the normal a little bit. Something that you'll find directly in the middle, again if we zoom back out so that you guys can get a sense of this. Here's Shadow of the Colossus. Now, yes, it's kind of a stylized, it kind of borders on anime in terms of visual style in my opinion. But again, like the real world physics, other than these crazy colossal giants, things kind of behave rather realistically. People can die, or creatures can kind of die. Things would kind of operate the way you would expect them to. So that's why I kind of categorize this thing in the middle. It feels about appropriate. It has a level of believability, but also a level of style that's also unique. And again, if you just peruse this, Um, you have the far right corner, upper right corner. So what this image is, this is from The Illusionist. Now, if you guys have ever seen this film, it has a very realistic sense of physics. That's why it's all the way up top here at the upper echelon. But it's also a 2D cartoon. I mean, it's done really, really well, and it's done really believably. But at the end of the day, it's still a cartoon, and it still has quite a lot of style that kind of puts you in that world. That's why I kind of categorize it over here. And you have films like Up and Toy Story 3, The Incredibles, things like that. They'll fall in different categories. Rounding this off is something like Beowulf, not a film that I enjoy particularly, but uh, it does go here in that it's kind of photoreal, but it's not, and it kind of has this magical realm in its own, so it doesn't lend itself to be perfectly in the real world. Where something like Black Hawk Down is completely based in the real world, so that's where it finds itself. And you'll start to notice a pattern if you sort of think about what we're seeing over here. Things like live action are going to tend to fall over here a little bit more. Things that fall. Let me see if I can draw on this thing. Whoop. There we go. So live action is going to, again, find itself kind of in this area, whereas cartoons, especially the really goofy ones, they're going to tend to fall in these areas. And then you have everything else in between. Maybe perhaps live action and realistic cartoons are going to be here. And then really goofy live action and goofy cartoons, they're going to be here, etc., etc. So I hope this chart makes sense. Now, I don't expect you guys to make or duplicate this. This is merely an example for you guys to understand how these styles sort of work. There's a lot of things not included on this chart, so this is kind of an example, but not limited to, if you will, sort of a diagram. Again, I just want you guys to be able to be clear about this. When we do our assignments for this class, I'd like for you guys to keep a style in mind. I'm really only going to force you to think about it on this first assignment, and then we're going to approach this again on the final assignment. Those two, the first and last assignment, I want you guys to match a style. Again, because I think it's a great skill to have, and that one that they didn't really teach us that in school, actually. They sort of did, and they talked about it, and at the end everybody figured it out. But professionally, I found it incredibly useful to be able to understand and adapt to a specific style. Like if someone, if Robert Valley, as an example, is the guy that designs characters for the show, and he can't design all the characters for one show all by himself, you're gonna have to be able to match his drawing style. And again, if you don't really draw the way he does, because you draw maybe more live action like or whatnot, you're going to find yourself not being able to get that job, or perhaps they thought you could do it and hired you to do so, but if you can't match it, then kind of off you go sort of thing. So again, it's something that I think is very important. It's something to think about. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started on examples of this week's assignment. It's probably worth going over the basic design process. In the studio environment, it's not the process that we follow strictly, but it's good to know, because it's good to know where you are at each step of the process, whether you're in the beginning stages or the final stages, etc., etc. And it's always something to fall back to if you're ever struggling with, I guess starting a project start to finish. So the way I usually start would be, and I'll just draw a cheesy diagram here, is really a concept is anything you can think of. It can come from anywhere. It could be a photo that you're interested in that you had taken. It could be some weird, wacky, theory that you read out of a magazine. Because I've done that in school. What does string theory look like? And you don't need to research it. You just read about it, think about what you think it is, and kind of express it visually, if you will. Um, or it could just be a story that you've lived in your life, etc. A concept can really be anything and everything, and it's incredibly vague. So what I'm sketching here is a little computer, and from here, wherever your concept comes from, could have came out of your head. Uh, you probably want to do some visual research in general. Again, if you want to explore a concept in its most exotic form, it can come from anywhere and have no process at all. But to break it down, let's just do the standard run-of-the-mill. This is generally how things are. I don't want to call it a formula because it's not really formula. It's just a structure of the way things are done. Even engineering kind of works this way too. You start with some research, which is what this is. And then from your research, you probably want to gather a bunch of photo references, style references if you're, trying to learn to draw in some new style, perhaps. So you're getting your images, etc. You're giving yourself a catalog of things to draw from, interesting forms and shapes to observe, etc., etc. So that's what this is, and this can go on forever, really. Don't spend too long on this. I've seen people do this. You can research forever, but you gotta make use of it at some point. Really. From your research, you probably want to do a round of like thumbnails. So we'll call this phase research. The next phase is thumbnails. And you can spend a lot of time doing this too. Some of the more innovative companies will actually spend a lot of time in this stage because they're really searching and feeling out for ideas. So again, these are drawings, maybe quick orthographs, drawing specific things, whatever. And again, this can go on for practically forever if you let it to. And then at some point, you're probably going to want some kind of final solution. Something you're going to be a little bit more committed about. And we tend to do larger drawings for this. Your six-legged mecha something. Here's our rear view, perhaps. And then, obviously, we get to a final. Now, being an entertainment design, the final is usually some glorious image. It depends on how far in the process. Most visual development actually kind of stops here. But of course, if you are a modeler or you're a set or you make sets and things like that, your final might actually. Let me give myself a little more room to draw here. Your final might actually be a model. If you're a car designer, your final is a car or whatever that you're gonna sculpt. Perhaps this even goes to another process, like full scale. But again, pretty rare in entertainment design because your process usually stops at some realized painting or something like that. So I hope this makes sense. That's basically how I'd like to approach this class. We're going to have 3 projects, 2 weeks each. The first project is going to be where you come up with your photo references, your sketches, and then I'd like you to kind of attack some kind of sketch render, if you will, which is kind of what this is, the pre-final. So I get a good idea, a good feel of what you guys are trying to do, so that when we approach the final, I can help redirect you. And polish is pretty important. I know that there could be, really polished things with very little content. Some Hollywood movies, if you will, is kind of that. Really polished, but really little content. Because, let's face it, you could have the greatest idea, but if it lacks a certain level of polish, people just aren't going to get it. So that's why I think it's important to break up our three projects in this way. That being said, uh, let's get started on this week's project. It would be super sweet if I could actually post these photo references while I work, to have like a dual monitor thing, which my recording software doesn't really allow, and plus that would make for a big impractical video anyways. So the idea is, this is kind of what was talking about in the research phase. At this point, I'm just looking at a bunch of styles, being that in this first week we're going to uh, choose a style that you're interested in working in, and then designing a prop in that style. I will actually go over in another week, the process of getting photos and all that stuff. Some of the sites I use and share and things like that, to be more specific to the design process. But this week is week one. We just want to have fun, get started, just go over a few things. Keep it light, keep it tame, and just have fun. Really, this week is really what I'd like you to focus on. If you're not having fun doing this, then you might want to think about another career, possibly. Anyways, this is some images from Blizzard's site. Just an idea of kind of what they do, some of their concept art. Some of it's more polished than others, but they generally have a style. I see Blizzard as this kind of chunky-ish, goofy kind of style. And then they generally like to render a lot of details, a lot of little, metal chips coming off the swords, or little organic bits coming off of the skin of their creatures, and all that sort of stuff. Really, really literal, actually. A lot less implicated. That's just kind of their house style, especially some of these more epic ones done by this guy Way sometimes. Again, it's just a style that I'm showing you. Again, and trying to keep these styles cohesive. This is the 3D Clone Wars show. These are actually screen caps that you can get from the internet. And again, to begin your research for this week, Google's fine. Whatever you can get. Again, just look at a style of a show. So these aren't concept art images. They don't really post that stuff for obvious reasons. But even the stuff you can get from TV, this will give you a look about, like some of the armor, glove bits that these characters wear, some character references, things like that. Here's a weapon, a sort of utility belt. You can even see the way they choose to apply texture on this guy. It's really flat, It is a TV show, and TV shows do suffer from the lack of budget and lack of time, really. So they have to get creative in how they use their people to create these shows. Count Dooku, again, like some of these bits are what I'm looking at in designing this first prop. So that's the Clone Wars. Now, here's Samurai Jack. This has a really unique style. It's really painterly, and it's really graphic, and it's really, really flat. The colors are just amazing, and love the use of texture. So from these three sets, you'll see that these are three totally different styles. This is an actual background for the show, so where you see this as the final for the Clone Wars, you see this being more of the final for Samurai Jack. Again, totally unique, totally different. So just pick something that you're interested in doing, and then what I'd like you to do is try to replicate it. The example that I'm going to be doing, this one's really beautiful, actually. What I'll actually be doing for this week's demonstration will be I've decided on a set of goggles. I had to pick something, and here's the thing with prop design, especially when you're taking a class, it could be as complicated as you make it. it could be as simple as you make it. So being that I didn't want to run forever, or maybe spend 10 hours doing a drawing or painting, I went with something that is pretty cool, that is a little bit more than perhaps a sharp stick that a character will hold, or a toothpick. Um, Believe me, that is a prop sometimes. I have a partner at work who's the prop designer for our show, Black Dynamite, and some days he gets the whole day, or even 2 or 3 days, to design a car, which is really cool, and the days that he's probably most excited about. There are days where he literally has to design a toothpick because some character is picking their teeth, and then, or someone's sick and they have a napkin that they're crumpling up, and that's an animated bit, so the other studios or whoever animates it has to know what it looks like. So you're designing tissue or a dollar bill or a cigarette butt or something. Those kind of props you can probably fly through like 10 in a day, or a dozen, 2 dozen in a day, or something like that. But again, something like a vehicle that's more complicated, or like a train that's got a train engine and a caboose and it's train cars. That's likely to take more than a day, 2, 3 days, a week perhaps. It really depends on the scope of the show. So again, even these goggles and glasses can get really crazy, like this night vision stuff. Now I'm showing you these images in advance because I'd like you guys to just be aware that this is part of the design process. This is where you start. I started with some sample references of styles, Samurai Jack, Blizzard, or perhaps the 3D Clone Wars show, and finding some of these images that what could goggles be, like this goofy egg carton goggle on this baby. I think it just caught my eye when I was on the Google search. I think these are classic aviator goggles. Again, another night vision set. This alone can get incredibly complicated to design, but it doesn't need to be. Basic safety goggles. Is your goggle for a human or an alien, or in this case, a dog, right? Three-eyed goggles. Perhaps you have a three-eyed creature. And then these are for, I don't know what these are for, but you got various bits, steampunk things, all kinds of things. Now you can get incredibly, there's different thoughts to designing as well. Some people will be like, especially in live action film, in live action science fiction film, for example, you're going to be pressed for, how does this work? Really, like, how does that strap work? How does that night vision work? Do they even have that technology in the proposed future that the film will be taking place in? Prometheus, as an example, it takes place in like 2089, 2094. Will they even have certain kinds of technologies? It's your job to think about that, and in the context of live action film, having a realistic understanding of these things can be helpful. But I mean, if you're in a show like this, Samurai Jack, or some goofy 2D cartoon show, don't get bogged down by how something like, I have no idea how this future stuff works. Your only job is to communicate that this is the future, and having these kind of shapes and form language is all you really need to communicate that, as opposed to something like this where you're not so much in the future. It's more of a natural setting, and you understand this is weapon, etc., etc. This is not the distant future. This almost looks like the 40s or 50s or some timeline, etc. So sometimes you can be whimsical depending on the context. Sometimes you need to be like dead serious, again in the terms of live action film. So just be aware of that. Now I've already decided what I'm going to do, holding on to, I usually have 2 sets of references, especially when I'm working in animation. I usually have my style reference, which is going to be the Clone Wars stuff. I'm actually going to design for this show for this week, something that would fit in this world. So some of the things that I observe is that these weapons don't look too crazy silly. They're not really pushed. These characters are kind of sculpted. So you have this chiseled look, but they're not pushing proportions too silly where things are broken and things like that. Even these blaster weapons.